Here we go with the next film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And before we begin, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This is my favorite Phase 1 movie. Not counting the Avengers because that's a special class movie, but this, as solo individual movies leading up to the Avengers movies, this is my favorite one. I'd say that the other films aren't good, but this is my favorite, and I just want to tell you that before we begin because I might spend a good amount of time fanboying. But I guess we should get into this plot, shall we? Bruce Banner is a brilliant scientist and on the run, hiding out in Brazil to avoid the military and keep down his rage, keep control of himself, find inner peace and all that stuff. But after an accident in the plant he's working on, the military comes to his front door hunting him down, forcing him to return to find Betty Ross, his old girlfriend, and request her aid in finding Samuel Stearns, a scientist he met over the internet who may have found a cure for Bruce's affliction. This affliction being a sort of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde style transformation where he transforms to the big green guy we all know and love as the Incredible Hulk. All the while, Betty's father, General Thunderbolt Ross, hunts him down, while accidentally turning one of his soldiers, Emil Blonsky, into the Abomination to help him catch the Hulk. This, of course, leads to the epic showdown between the Hulk and the Abomination that goes down in all Marvel comic classicness. So, yeah, let's talk about why this movie isn't brought up much. The casting changes. Edward Norton did not reprise his role for Bruce Banner following this film. Instead, the role was turned over to Mark Ruffalo after negotiations failed between him and Marvel Studios. Not a lot of details are known about what went down. I'm pretty sure it might have been over some money or something. But I think this is part of the reason that we never got a follow-up to this movie, and that really, really sucks. A lot of things that are brought up here to lead into other potential Hulk sequels are never brought up again, especially considering the foreshadowing they did beforehand. Things that aren't mentioned again include General Thunderbolt Ross. General Thunderbolt Ross's anti-Hulk squad. Betty Ross. Betty Ross's post-Bruce Banner boyfriend. Leonard Samson, who in the comics becomes Doc Samson, someone who's as strong as the Hulk. Samuel Stearns is mutating into the leader at the end of the film. The Abomination. I do know that they do mention what happens to him in a short film, but they never mention anything that happens beyond that. And considering some later revelations in the MCU, it's really surprising that they never bring up, the Abomination again, especially considering the fact that most villains die in their films, and he's the one that we know is assured alive. Now let's go over the changes they did to the Hulk's origin. Instead of it being a big old gamma bomb that turned Bruce into the Hulk, in this case, it was an experiment to try and recreate the super soldier serum. This isn't really said so much in the film itself, but later brought up in the Avengers when Captain America meets Bruce Banner. Honestly speaking, this is something that came from the Ultimate Universe line of stories. And honestly, I do like that because the MCU tries to take a little bit of everything from its different comic book adaptations its different comics to bring into the fold. I do like the idea that it's not a giant bomb that turned Bruce to the Hulk, it's just a simple formula that did it by accident, as it makes it a bit more smaller scale and reduces the risk of other things. But let's move on to the post-credit scene, and honestly, it's nothing more than a simple scene. Yes, it does lead into the short film I mentioned before to deal with what happened to the Abomination, but if you've never seen that short film like I hadn't until this moment, it's a pretty short, simple scene. The basic gist of the scene, let me describe it, is Tony Stark walking into a bar where Ross is. That's it. As well as seeing Bruce trying to learn to control the Hulk, which leads into the Avengers later on. Again, it's nothing more than a simple scene, and I think that's all we needed in this case. Again, I'm really sad, especially considering some things that happened in Avengers 2, you all know what I mean, that nothing from this film outside the Hulk itself is brought up ever again. I don't know if it's really the casting changes that did it, because I'm assuming, even though it's unlikely as it seems, that this film happens way before any of the other films, not counting Captain America. because of, the stuff with how Bruce Banner looks as a young man in this film, at least in his early late 20s, and he looks like he's in his later 30s by Avengers. I mean, did it all happen off screen or something? Because, again, you'll have all this set up in this really interconnected universe of films, but you never bring it up again at all. Like, did Samuel Stearns die? He was turning into a leader last time we saw him. What about Betty Ross? Is she upset that Bruce is gone? Is Thunderbolt Ross still alive? Or what's going on with those guys? Especially considering stuff in Avengers 2. What happened to Bruce and Betty? It's just me fanboying. Overall, I have to say this movie is a fun ride. Due to the unfortunates of having none of its various plot threads brought up again in the MCU, it kind of makes it somewhat infuriating, as I just mentioned earlier. I do hope that somewhere down the line we can get some resolution to these things. But again, Betty's never mentioned again, and again, the little things in Avengers 2, for those of you who all know what I mean, and it's been about 10 years, I honestly doubt it. This is still my favorite movie of the Phase 1 movies as a movie, and I do love me some Hulk action, but again, it's just kind of infuriating in the overall scheme of things. Well, maybe next time we'll talk about something that's a little more simple.